Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into my channel. As you can tell, this video is actually in landscape. But enough about that. Let's get on to my spoiler-free review of Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, Book 1 of the Stormlight Archives. As you can tell, this is a pretty chunky book, and it was amazing all throughout the way. But without further ado, let's get on to the world building. The Way of Kings takes place on the planet Roshar, a world that is racked by devastating storms called high storms. And these high storms are important to the magic system as well because they charge up spheres of stormlight, and stormlight is what essentially allows the magic system to work. It's more complicated than that, but essentially the surges are built off of stormlight. If you have stormlight reserves, you can lash or fly, slide across stone, all such other cool things. I won't get too much into the details of the magic systems because some of that could be spoilerly. I do enjoy the surges and how they're all interconnected because one-on-one, each surge by itself isn't the most original or unique idea, but how they combine together I just love, and especially how they're built up through the Knight's Radiance, which again, I won't go into too much detail of since it is a lot of spoiler details. However, speaking of the Knight's Radiance, or should I say, speaking of Spren, they are essentially embodiments or personifications of nature, such as wind Spren are attracted to wind, fire Spren are attracted to fire, honor Spren are attracted to honorable people, and so on and so forth. Now, there is a little discussion in the books on if wind Spren are attracted to wind or if they are caused to wind, and similarly with other types of Spren, but at least to how I interpret it and from what I see, and I think the essential outcome of it anyway, is that these Spren are attracted to these events. Well, not events, but you know what I mean. Attracted to these natural elements or attributes about people and forces of nature, and so on and so forth. Another aspect of the Spren I like the idea of these little sentient spirit people. Of course, they're not technically spirits, and not all Spren are sentient. Some Spren, such as higher Spren, like Cultivation Spren, Ink Spren, Honor Spren, Cryptics, they're sentient, while other Spren like Wind Spren and Fire Spren are more animal-like or instinctual in terms of intelligence. But this isn't just a lecture about Spren. More onto the world building. I love the classification of classes and whatnot in Elfcar, and especially Vorin society. And I've just never seen it before where society is divided by eye color, such as people with green eyes, blue eyes, light violet eyes are at the top of society. They're called light eyes or bright lords or bright ladies. While dark-eyed people, such as yours truly, who have brown eyes, would be considered dark eyes. And I think I've seen it once or twice where they call it dark one, referring to the eye color. I only remember it happening once or twice. I don't think it's a common term, but I don't know. I just found it interesting how society is separated like this. They have phrases that are meant as honorific or derogatory. Please let me know if you've seen this before, because in my experience, this is my first time seeing a fantasy world divided this way. And of course, which is another aspect that I enjoy, is how different cultures are of course different. Not every nation on Roshar believes this. It's really only followed by the Vorin countries of the east, and Vorin is one of the many religions, and that's another aspect I enjoy of the world building, is how each country and culture and people group have their own histories and religions or religious interpretations, and a lot of times in fantasy you don't get that many, or if you do, it's not in depth. And I love how Brandon goes really in depth with these things, such as how in foreign societies men and women's roles are so structured and separate and different, such as there's specific food for men and specific food for women. Women have to wear a glove or have their left hand, which is also called a saved hand, hidden away since it is considered immodest for a woman to show their left hand, and men aren't permitted to read or write since that, along with being a scholar, is considered feminine. And I just think that's a cool idea, as you don't normally see it split up like that. And I just love the in-depth detail that Brandon goes into his work and even explains why it's that way. However, that's enough of the culture and society for now. Let's get on to the actual book itself in the beginning, where Zeth Sun Volano goes to kill a king. And no, that's not a spoiler, it's the first line of the book. Okay, first line of the prologue, but anyway, look it up, it's good. So after Zeth does kill King Elokar, the Alethi go on the vengeance pact against the Parshendi, who they just signed an alliance with, and hours into signing the treaty, the Parshendi assassinate their king. So the vast majority of this book takes place in the Shattered Plains, which is where the main bulk of the conflict is. And with the armies of each princedom, because Alethkar is separated into several princedoms, you have the bridge runs. And the bridge runs, they're not pretty. Essentially you have 35, I believe it was 35 to 40, it might have been only 30 men, take bridges, run them across the Shattered Plains, push those bridges over chasms, and while trying not to get killed by Parshendi archers, just so your army can run across those bridges and get to the Parshendi. And yeah, as you can imagine, a lot of people die. It's nice and bloody and great. However, as you can imagine, those are pretty tragic actually, with a ton of characters dying. And that gets me to our next discussion point. The characters. The characters of Stormlight Archive and the Way of Kings, especially since this book 1, are great. I love the detail Brandon goes into them and fleshing them out. Not just the major characters, but how each of the minor characters do kind of have their own little story and distinct personalities. And how he handles mental illness is just great, such as Kaladin having depression. Kaladin is not defined by his depression. Yes, depression is a big aspect of who he is, but he's a character first that just happens to have depression. And I really enjoy that, since a lot of people in a lot of works tend to have the mental illness as the sole defining part of their character. And true, Kaladin really does need a therapist. But outside of depression, he's loyal, he's caring, he's honorable, he has bursts of anger or impatience. Well, maybe not impatience, but he does have bursts of anger at time or resentment of the world around him. And it's not all focused solely on the aspect of his depression. And beyond Kaladin, we also have Shallan. Now, a lot of people don't like Shallan. I mean, and I kind of get it and kind of don't. Shallan is one of my favorite characters, and yeah, she's not nearly as witty or funny as the narration makes her out to be, but I mean, she's still a good character that has her own growths and experiences and struggles. And I love how in the Way of Kings, she's essentially going to protect her family. She has to go to rob someone, and that person she starts growing really close to and tries to grapple with doing this horrible thing to rob this person in order to protect her brothers and her family. I don't know, I just think that's a cool little aspect of her character, how she has to grow and grapple with it. And I mean, I know some people just think, oh, well, Shallan's doing this, it makes her a bad person. No, it makes her human, and it's not like the story glorifies Shallan for it, because it doesn't. And also with Shallan, I like the sneak peeks you get of her and her past, and while we do see more of this in future books, the magic system or the surges she takes are very distinctive, I should say, from Kaladin. And yeah, so both of the arcs are pretty fun. I will say when I first read, I did prefer Kaladin's arc, or at least his chapters, but on my rereads, I thought they were both pretty enjoyable. And now that leads me to the other two point of view characters, Adolin and Dalinar. Now Dalinar has two sons, Adolin and Renarin. And in the history of Roshar, Dalinar is known as the Blackthorn, a violent warmonger who was basically feared and respected by all through Alethkar. That attitude towards him has begun to change, because as he's aged, some people are thinking, oh, he's falling out of touch or he's losing his mind. And that's in no small part because Dalinar is suffering from visions that he believes are from the Almighty. And yeah, the Almighty is the foreign name for God, though he's also known as Honor. Dalinar thinks these visions are real, while his son Adolin fears his father is going insane and delusional and wants the Blackthorn back because he's worried about how it will look at his house if his father seems to be going insane. Of course, Adolin doesn't want his father to go insane. He loves Dalinar. He can't be uncertain if this is really happening to him or not. And I just love how they clash. You kind of, I won't say butt heads, because Dalinar and Adolin do get along, but I love how it kind of just to see how they build off of each other and the respect Adolin has for his father, but at the same time the worry and fear that his father is losing his touch. And also Dalinar's own inner turmoil is if these are real or if he's actually going crazy, but he wants to believe them. What doesn't help Dalinar either is that his former best friend Sadeas is now his enemy, in large part because both of them blame each other for King Gavilar's death. So, because Sadeas failed to protect the king properly, and Dalinar was passed out drunk when his brother was assassinated. And now again, not spoiler, happens in the first chapter. Okay, prologue, but you know what I mean. Beyond the point of view characters, the side characters too have their own personalities and arcs and their own wants and needs, and I really much enjoy that, especially with as many characters that there are. You do get the sense this is an integral world where each character has their own desires and has their own past and backstory, and don't just revolve around the main characters. And I really enjoy that in a book, and I think Brandon does a great job. Now, with the positives out of the way, let's get on to some nitpicks. And on to nitpick number 1. Kaladin being called Stormblessed from the beginning. Now I get it. His first squad saw him as lucky. Thought he was a pretty cool guy who a lot of cool stuff happens to. Okay, fine. The problem is, later on, Kaladin comes face to face with a high storm. I won't go into it for spoilerly reasons, but narratively and how other characters react to him, I think would have made much more sense and been stronger if he would have earned the moniker of Stormblessed after this point. And that kind of leads me on to nitpick number 2. The beginning was a little slow. Granted, that's because there was a preface, the prologue where King Gavilar dies, and then chapter 1, which is told through another character's point of view. In fact, this character is from Kaladin's first squad, you never hear from again. And I get it. It shows you another character's perspective of Kaladin and how he differed from his actual first chapter. And I get the reasons, because the first chapter shows Kaladin in a much different light, because his world's kind of been turned upside down after the actual first chapter. I do think this could have worked though, or perhaps worked better as a flashback, since the Way of Kings is heavily focused on Kaladin. It still could have been the first chapter, but I think would have been more effective if it was clear this was a flashback from the beginning. Let me know what you all think in the comments. As terms of flashbacks go, I will say, out of the 4 books of the Stormlight Archive that I've read up to this point, I do feel like this one has the second strongest flashback chapters, and I enjoy how they relate to Kaladin's growth and story. Now, on to nitpick number 3. While I get the reasons why they were there, I feel like some of the bridge runs in training near the end of the book could have been condensed. Now I get it, each bridge run has its reason for being there, but some of the ending ones could have been condensed down to just 1 or 2, and still have the same event, the same impact, and it would have cut down the length of the book a little bit, because at some points it just seems like there's bridge run after bridge run and after bridge run. Along with that, while I think it's poignant and interesting how Kaladin trains his bridge crew, which is called Bridge 4 because that was the one he's assigned to be soldiers and teaches them the spear, I feel like some of that could have been cut down and condensed. Now, obviously you can't train them in one session, because I hate when authors just have a character learn something, they master it right away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that some of it could have been cut back or just told in a different way to show how they're growing in experience. Because to me, some of that just either repetitive or I don't know. Not that it wasn't exciting. It's just, I don't know. There's cooler aspects I would have preferred to read. And that leads me on to nitpick number 4. There are too many bridgemen. Don't get me wrong. Of course, 30 men in a bridge crew. Bridge 4 is going to have a ton of people. However, there are some minor bridgemen that are mentioned once or twice, which could have been cut out and given to other minor bridgemen to flesh out those ones better. Now, you have characters like Teft, Moash, Scar, Dreyer, Sigzil, Lopen, Rack, who are great, and they're the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bridgemen like Mart or Eth, who are only mentioned a couple times. I think their parts could have just been removed or replaced by Dunny and Maps, who are also minor bridgemen, but those two characters, things happen to them in the book where the reader could have had a little bit more with them to make the emotional impact stronger if these other minor bridgemen weren't mentioned or were replaced with Dunny and Maps. Okay, and there are my little nitpicks. I thought I had a fifth one, but I can't remember it, and I don't feel like sitting around here thinking about it. So, let's finish this off with another positive, since, as I've mentioned a bunch of times in this video, Way of Kings is a great book. I love the ending. I just love how you get the sense of dread and despair and betrayal from Adolin and Adolin, and just as they watch this, what's happening to their army and Sedaeus' army, and I just love how you can just feel their despair and like, oh crap, we're gonna die. And I think Brandon does a great job of showing that. I also love how it shows Kaladin and Bridge 4's growth as characters and the culmination of their arcs, essentially going to do something they do not need to do. In fact, they have every reason to do the opposite, but they do the heroic and honorable action, and for once in their lives, especially Kaladin, he goes through a lot, pays off positively for them. Especially love Kaladin's moment when facing down in Parshendi. I won't go into spoiler details obviously, but it's just a big, and I love it, and I love Brandon's ending, especially the Way of Kings, and what Dalinar does for Bridge 4 after this pivotal moment. Okay, there is my review of the Way of Kings. As for the rating, this is an easy 5 out of 5 stars. And on to my favorite characters, in no particular order. We have Kaladin, Shallan, Syl, Dalinar, Adolin, Renarin, and Teft. And there we go. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Who are your favorite characters? I'd love to find out. And thank you all for watching my video, and have a good day. Bye.